Hello, everyone, and welcome to Barre Talk. I'm Maria Konrad. On behalf of Só Dança, we are so excited to welcome Neal. Hi, Philip.
Hello, Maria the Marvelous.
And can you tell us where you are right now during quarantine?
I'm in my office. I usually have my face mask on when I'm teaching, but the doors are closed and my French bulldogs are on the floor. I'm in the Straz Center, home of Next Generation Ballet.
We're so excited to have you here. Okay, so full disclosure, everyone, I know Philip pretty well. We are big hearts, yes, okay. So can you tell your origin story of how you started, where you started, and all of that for us?
Yeah. This is an hour? No, I'll try to make the origin story short. I essentially started dancing at the School of Urchin Ballet. I danced in Memphis for a year or two before, got pulled in by Nutcracker. My sister was the ballerina, went to go pick her up in the car, and then I imitated everything my sister did. So, my sister's like, get him his own class. I don't want him stealing focus. Trained at School of Urchin Ballet. I remember Edward Villella came to teach a master class when I was like 11 years old and saw me and was like, you need to go to School of American Ballet this summer. And we were like, great, what's that? And started a learning curve. I went to SAB, like I was 11 or 12 on full scholarship. And it's I remember coming home that first summer course day saying, I know what I want to do with the rest of my life. And somehow I made it happen. I got into New York City Ballet and had my long career. Now, Maria, I've known you primarily since I retired. Right. Just 10 years ago, the other day, I had my 10-year anniversary from retiring from New York City Ballet. I moved to Palm Beach. That's when I first met Maria. And I was working for Edward Villella, Miami City Ballet, for a little while. And I've been here in Tampa, Florida, for 5 years as artistic director of Next Generation Ballet. And in full disclosure, I hired Maria to come and work with me here. Because I love her. So now my whole family's here. My husband's here. My French bulldogs are here. My life is all centered around Tampa. But I still do work for the Balanchine and the Robbins Trust, staging all their ballets. So I'm kind of living my best life in many different aspects.
Philip, can you tell the people about the first time you met me?
When you were all curled up on a desk.
I was like, tell me about your life.
It was in Palm Beach, Florida, when I still lived in Palm Beach. I lived in Palm Beach and Miami before moving to Tampa. And I went to the Dreyfus School, which I heard a lot about. And I was sort of, inquiring on behalf of Miami. And I knew Jan Hannaford Getz that ran Dreyfus. And I heard about you from people, this very enthusiastic, charming, talented choreographer teacher.
Keep going.
And you're very at ease with yourself, and you just kind of curled up on the desk and sat and started talking to me. And I don't think I made the connection until I came here when a couple of people said, you really need to reach out to Maria Konrad, that was you. I just knew I really liked you. Well, and then we made that connection, it all fired. Yeah.
I was always, I love dance. I love all forms of dance. And I knew who you were. And I do remember curling up in my sweatpants and being like, so Philip, tell me about the world, which is great because now here we are so many years later through Zoom doing the exact same thing for other people to see. So full circle all the way around. Okay, Philip, this next section is our 20-question speed round. Woo. Are you ready? It's first word answers.
Really? Okay, so it's like the first thing that comes to mind. All right.
First thing that comes, like a game show. Okay, here we go. Lady Gaga or Madonna?
Gaga.
Bourneville or Petipa?
Petipa.
Okay. Champagne or martini?
Champagne.
Barbecue or tacos?
Tacos.
Okay, just so the people know, Philip Neal, like fancy Philip Neal, does love a taco. I've seen it in action. Here we go. Dogs or cats? Oh, Ed Grimley or the church lady?
I do both of them. Oh my God, I'm never like that. I'll say your other deal about that. Yeah, yes, show. Probably Ed Grimley because of the dance.
The dance.
Well, they both have dances, but I like the waist up around the arm.
Okay. London or Paris?
London.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
love London. I love the art. I love the contemporary art scene.
Okay. Swan Lake or Sleeping Beauty?
On like,
Grand Allegro or pirouettes?
ooh, ah, pirouettes.
Okay. Designing Women or Golden Girls?
Golden Girls.
I
Florida.
love it. Nureyev or Vilela?
Oh, come on. You know I'm going to say Valella. He's my mentor.
Okay. Sophia Loren or Audrey Hepburn?
Well, you know, the dancer in me, Audrey Hepburn.
Okay. Turning Point or The Red Shoes?
Oh, Turning Point. Oh, I got a good Turning Point story. I'll tell that later. Okay.
Okay. Jazz or blues?
Jazz.
Snickers or Twix?
Snickers.
Gym or Pilates?
Gym.
Central Park or the Met?
Or the Met?
Yeah.
The Met.
Okay. You did it. You did great. And you were like,
They were hard choices.
I know, but they make you really dig deep.
Yes. The Turning Point, let me tell you, when that came out, my uncle in Richmond was the projectionist for the Biograph movie theater.
Okay.
And it was kind of an old-fashioned movie house with a balcony up above. And like, you had to go and change the celluloid and like change the reels like 3 or 4 times in the movie. And I would leave my school, my day school, to go home to then drive to Richmond Valley. But along the way, I would stop at the movie theater and I would run up and I would dance in the balcony to the Turning Point because like there weren't a lot of people there in the afternoon, so they just opened below. And I would do like the whole Kingdom of the Shades, or I would dance with Misha. And I danced to that movie in the movie theater for like, and movies would run for like 3 months at a time, you know, they didn't turn over. And then I went to New York and like I saw it all. I saw all the places that they filmed, and my friend was renting from Leslie Brown, her studio apartment. So like she came over and she signed her autograph and she talked to me. It was like so surreal. The Turning Point is probably like the most influential movie I can say I've ever seen.
You know, and this generation doesn't know that movie. It's so good. And
It's like the best dance-on film of all time.
It's true. It's
Yeah.
true. I agree with you on that. Okay, so this is our 10 questions in 10 minutes. We can go a little longer than 10 minutes.
We always do, Maria. We always.
But what brought this together is like in the beginning of quarantine, I was missing the connection to dancers and I just wasn't getting it through dancing through Zoom. And I realized that so many of my friends have such amazing stories. And I think that there's not enough historical information about dance or dancers, and like just to have it on video and preserved, I think it's just so great. So what is the greatest lesson that dance has taught you? It's a hard question.
I think it's appropriate with what's happening right now, survivalism. How to reinvent yourself, be disciplined, fluid to change. Yeah, I mean, I never had a problem doing my schoolwork. I wasn't one of those kids. I was always very disciplined. I always liked being good at something. You know, people like being good at something, and dance came to me. It didn't matter if I was bullied or whatever. I always loved dance more than I feared bullying. But constantly having to go with the flow and readjust, I think it's a really good, timely lesson. Dancers that segue from a career into something else always do well. Always. They know how to land on their feet.
I agree. And I have to say something about your academic side, because when I was guesting at St. Paul's School in New Hampshire, it's a very open environment in the Harry Potter world that it is. And I was eating dinner in the dining hall, and one of the teachers there came up and started speaking with me, and he said, "Do you know Mr. Neal?" And I said, "Actually, I do know Mr. Neal." And he said, "He was an excellent student." And he was an academic teacher. I thought it was fantastic. Oh, is that your St. Paul's diploma?
Cum laude society, baby. You know the cum laude society in St. Paul. You have to be in the top 5% academically to get that. So it's very cool.
Look at you.
And everyone should know. Kate Lydon from ABT is running the St. Paul's department now, and our good friend Jennifer Howard before that from White Oak and Twyla. they've really had a great legacy of balancing good academia with great dance.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Now I need you to choose one that you can actually talk about, but I need you to tell me about your worst performance and why. Like what happened that you can talk about, that you can share.
There were none. You kind of block them out. I'll tell you a funny story. It wasn't like an epic disaster, but you know, sometimes like on a matinee on these New York City Ballet weekends when you do 4 shows in a weekend, because we used to do 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday, you almost like glaze over. You're on autopilot, and it's not a good thing. And sometimes like the matinees are not quite awake yet. And I remember doing this, like, I think because it wasn't super technically hard. It was at Peter Martin's ballet, and it was a lot of partnering, but I didn't have to do double tours to the knee or anything. And I was dancing with my partner, and I was very used to her. And I put her down from a lift, and I tripped as I was running up, but I had my hand on her waist. Like I just put her down, and she's supposed to run. And I didn't let go of her waist as I started to fall. So I kind of like pulled her down with me to the floor, which was completely unnecessary and rude. So, I mean, she laughed about it. She's like, really? You couldn't let go? And like, it wasn't a big deal. But then like, I spoiled myself. I went to a restaurant across the plaza to like feel better about myself for the evening. And Peter Martin's was there having lunch. So like, that was a smooth move, Philip. You know, like you had to bring your ballerina down. So it wasn't an epic disaster, but it makes for a good because I have this reputation being the gracious partner, but for some reason I didn't want to let go of Helene, and Helene was so sweet to drag me off stage. Like, she's literally dragging me off stage.
Okay, I love that one. I've never heard that one, so I'm excited about that. Okay, what inspires you?
Ooh. People. Like you. Not to brown nose Maria.
Like you, yeah.
But I think, especially in the past 10 years, I got very comfortable in my wonderful environment in New York City Ballet. I got such good friends with so many people, and they're all doing so well there. But when I left and I moved to Florida, I kind of had to reinvent myself and a whole career and what I was going to do. And I found that the people I met along the way really invigorated me. And sometimes I needed a push. You push me from time to time. I push you from time to time. But I ended up doing things I never saw myself doing or even thought I was capable of. And that's only because of like the personal interaction. And I think that's probably why you want to do something like this. That's what we're hungry for. That's what we miss, the personal interaction and inspiring one another. So like when you leave New York City Ballet and people say, oh, do you miss it? I'm like, yeah, I miss the shows. And yeah, I kind of miss, you know, I miss that. But what I really miss is like rehearsing with Wendy Whalen, you know, and like joking about things ridiculous like South Park before performance of Diamonds and Tutu. You know, like it's like those things that you miss. It's the personal connections. And I think we're blessed in ballet that's such a big part of, I mean, now it's weird. I'm at the computer all the time and I'm, you know, like I have my door closed because I have to like socially distance myself, but we're so open with each other and depend on each other. It's a really beautiful thing. People.
I love that. No, that's a good answer. Good job. Okay, so here we go. Have you ever sustained a devastating injury? And can you talk about your path to healing and recovering? Because I think that dancers need to learn, it's part of our business. They need to learn that there's a process to dealing with injury and that it is going to be part of our life and it is not the end.
Yeah. I was the type that when I was injured and I was out, I was really out, like it was a big deal, or I didn't miss a show for 5 years.
Right.
There were 2 big surgeries. I had one when I was 24 and one when I was 36. The one that I was 36 and with my knee was really kind of scary because it was the end of my career. Mm-hmm. The one when I was 24 was hard because I actually injured my foot at SAB when I was 19 and it never really got diagnosed.
Hold on just a second, Philip. Hold on just a second. Go back and talk about the 24 because you froze. So go one more time.
So I had 2 surgeries when I was 24. And what was so challenging about it was the diagnosis. It wasn't the actual surgery and healing from it. Because when I had major foot surgery and minor knee surgery, and when I healed from it, I did not miss a show for 4 years. That includes covering for everybody else. But it was the diagnosis was tricky. I chipped an extra bone off my foot at SAB when I was 19, and it would move around in my foot. And I would sometimes have such excruciating pain I couldn't even walk. And then 2 days later, I'd be fine. But it wasn't diagnosed right. Okay. So I basically worked my way up to principal dealing with this, and often thought it was in my head. And a lot of other people thought it was in my head. And I remember going to Dr. Hamilton, who did all my surgeries in New York. And he's like, and I spent a lot of my own money flying all over the world getting diagnosed, and even that. It just was sitting in a weird way, like it didn't show up in the MRI. Dr. Hamilton said, go over to the studio, do your hardest variation. I said, I haven't danced in like 3 months. Dance until you can't walk across the street. I limped across the street. I pointed on my foot where it was. He wrote it with a Sharpie, said, don't take a bath. He booked the operating room. He went in the next day. He had to cut through my deltoid ligament, which is like the thickest ligament in your foot. It's like what soccer players hurt. Cut through it and pulled out a bone chip this big out of my foot.
Oh my God.
Sewed up my deltoid ligament. The scarring was major. Like I really had to get a lot of raw thing in it. But that's what it was. And it had been sitting in my foot for 5 years. And then he's like, oh, while we're at it, let's do the torn meniscus on your knee, which was just like, but I tell that story because so many people look at me and, oh, he never had any problems and he still got all his hair. And like, you know, my life was so easy. And I mean, people are like, oh, he's always hurt or he's a crybaby. It's like, it just was such a difficult, challenging thing. Like I remember doing Sleeping Beauty, double tour fifth to fifth. I'm like, I landed and I was in such excruciating pain, I couldn't even walk. And I went home and stuck in an ice bucket, came back to dance the next day because they kept saying there's nothing wrong with you.
But that's what I think is important too, is that we have to know our emotions versus our gut, and the fact that you knew in your gut something was really wrong.
It helped me. Kira Nichols had a similar issue. Mm-hmm. And she said, I actually had the same thing. She didn't have it as long as I did, but she said she got a CAT scan on her bone chip. And it's like bread. You can slice it this way or this way. So the scan image took it at a different angle. Uh-huh. And that's when they said, oh, well, there is a little blip there, but it's really nothing to worry about. Well, meanwhile, her Achilles tendon was coming unraveled and my chip was bigger than my thumb. So all is well, but I want people to know. And now I'm like, everyone goes in, oh, it's just like Philip Neal, the diagnosis, like I'm legendary in that doctor's office. It's sometimes different than you sprain your ankle or you go, like I never had an injury where I came down and they were all accumulative things.
Right. Okay. Aside from dance, do you have any other passions?
I get asked that all the time, and I kind of feel bad because no, there's nothing that consumes me like dance. You know,
well, that's okay. That's fair.
I'm going to be honest. It was just like it's my marriage, my dogs, being outside. You know, renovating my gazillionth apartment that my husband and I always do. As soon as like it's done, we sell it as another one. But I'm not going to say, you know, macrame plant holder or sewing or like. No, I mean, I'm not like windsurfing every weekend. I'm enjoying being outside in Florida. Like do I take class anymore? Not really. I'd rather go biking or swimming and demonstrate. But I mean, like, do you, Maria, have something that just like some hobby that consumes you?
I do. I love to cook.
Well, I cook, you know that.
That's like a meditation for me, is cooking.
When I had that surgery, and it took me a year to come back from, I was cooking like you can't believe. I mean, every night was like, you know, my partner at the time was like, are you going back to work? Too bad, because the meals will end.
Okay. So you had such a long career and there were so many roles that you did get to dance, right? And so many roles that were so appropriate for you. Was there one role that you didn't get to do that maybe you weren't made for, or you like always wanted to do, like Golden Idol, or you know what I mean? Something that like you would have loved to dance that you never got to.
Fun. Yeah, well, I mean, there's the ballets that you're just not physically appropriate for, like, you know, Prodigal Son. I will say, because I don't really have a lot of regrets, and when you're in a company like New York City Ballet, it's so vast. everybody, you know, you tend to get sort of like pigeonholed into certain roles that you do well. And everybody feels the same way.
Right.
If you're in a smaller company, I say this to my students all the time that are graduating, smaller companies are great and you might get to dance a bigger variety of roles.
Yeah.
I kind of I started off like everything was jazzy. I was doing Western Symphony, I was doing Slaughter on 10th Avenue, I was Mr. Jazz Hands. Then I became Mr. Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty, and then I got pigeonholed in that. The one part that I feel like I could have done more of and maybe I didn't get to do would be the contemporary ballets or the black and white Stravinsky ballets.
Okay.
I would have liked to have done Stravinsky Violin Concerto or Agon, or had someone come in and like really, like I was going to do Red Angels. I was going to do Ulysses Dove. He picked me actually. And I was coming back from that surgery that we were talking about. And it's just like, you know, I'm not heartbroken about it, but I think it's also why I embraced you so much and want you to do so much contemporary work for me. I almost lived a little vicariously through it because I feel like I have more to contribute on that than I was able to as a dancer. So now I'm doing.
You're such a good coach. You have such a good eye. Well, that brings us to our next question. Who is your favorite, because you're both a dancer and a choreographer and a director and a set. I mean, the list goes on. It's really too much. But who is your favorite dancer, either you grew up watching or dancer now, and choreographer?
These are the questions I never answer, Maria.
I know, it's too hard.
What's your favorite ballet? The one I'm dancing at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be lying if I still didn't think that George Balanchine was the greatest choreographer that ever walked the planet.
It's true.
It's just true because his ballets are so reverential to the past and so respectful of Petipa and Bournonville and all of his predecessors. But like, you can do his ballets from the 40s and they still look current and modern, and they don't. Yeah. You can dress it up, you can dress it down. And like, I think people now are really beginning to understand it's not some foreign thing. Like I always like, how can you like be a Balanchine people, but you run a Vaganova-based school? I'm like, where do you think it comes from? It all comes from Vaganova. But I think that people are still using Balanchine choreographers today as their sounding board. I think they have a freer voice. I spoke to Justin Peck about this one night at dinner when he was just starting. And I said, Justin, in a way, you're really lucky you're starting now, because if you had started when I did in the 80s, it's too new. You're too tethered to it. It's like now there's enough distance from it. You can look at it from a distance, but you're not going to be automatically compared to him.
Yes.
I mean, you're more compared to Jerry because Jerry Robbins had passed on later, and his ballets reflect that a little bit more.
Right.
But I think choreographers have a bigger freedom than they did in maybe the late 80s and 90s when those geniuses were just passing. I think there was really the innovator at the time was Billy Forsythe, because he was off in Europe and wasn't bound to that.
Yeah.
Dancer? Ooh, that's hard.
Is there a dancer you looked up to growing up?
Well, I mean, personally for me, there were those men that I could see myself stepping into their repertoire, or I really loved them. Like for me, it was Peter Martins and Sean Lavery at New York City Ballet. I was like literally putting their costumes on and teaching me their parts. Like, yeah. I loved Deborah Villela, but there wasn't a lot of Villela in my costume rack, you know, because they just leave the names in there. So it was like Martins, Lavery, Neal, and now it's like Tyler Engel and, you know, Fairchild, you know, like they'll send me a picture of like the costume, because Tyler Engel's in my place now, and he shows me all the Philip Neals and all of his costumes. You know, and then like all the ballerinas growing up, like, yeah, I mean, I watched everybody when I would go to New York. I remember watching Margot Fontaine the one time that she was, well, no, it wasn't her, I mean, Macarva. When she was doing like Roland Petit at the Met, you know, I didn't always go to New York City Ballet. I do hold up certain dancers a lot now as people to emulate. Right. You know, and I'm really careful. I was like, you can't all be Tyler Peck because she's compact and she's small, and so sometimes you're Maria Konrad. But I love people like Tyler Peck because their background is so varied. They can do any style. They're gracious. Yeah. And they make it look easy. I don't want to look at the effort. I don't want to get all dressed up, do my hair, sit down, and pour sweat watching someone. I want to sit back, and I don't want to see the effort. You did all the effort.
I think that's what makes Balanchine so great, is that it's so many joyful works, you know? And
they're hopeful and romantic.
And like my friend Christina's mom says, the proof is in the pudding all the time, right? So I think we definitely know that. Now, I know the answer to this question, and this wasn't on my list, but I think it's a really good one for you, is who was one of your most influential teachers?
Woo! Okay. I'm going to say 3 of them, okay, for different reasons. Because, I mean, it's really wrong of me not to say all the people growing up at Richmond Ballet and all of that. But I think the one that, like, why I was in New York and why I was in New York City Ballet was Stanley Williams.
Mm.
And I think almost any man of my age, no matter what company they ever danced in, will say that. I've talked a lot about with Gennady Savelyev, you know, he's like Stanley, and he gets it. He was there during that time. I will tell you, I once took an SAB class. Everyone went to go rehearse for a workshop, but I wasn't in that particular ballet. You want to know who was in men's class that day? Me, the only student, with Bahonis, Patrick Bissell, Nureyev, Misha, and then like Mara Lashley, Darcy Kistler, and Heather Watts. Like, it was all the stars in the dance world and me. And he would say, Philip, would you show that combination we did yesterday? And it was almost like a joke. And, you know, Nureyev was there in head to toe pink with a little beanie, pink and pink shoes and the whole pink outfit. And I went downstairs to rehearse and I was like, who cares about workshop? Like, that was unreal. And then as a professional, 2 people, Maggie Black, because she helped me back from those injuries. And
Charles Askegaard, your other half from New York City Ballet. I know Charles has your heart and you have his heart. Like, he talked about Maggie Black. Like,
not only by the time she was teaching with me, she was getting a lot of different people from different companies, and it wasn't so geared one way. She's like, I know you're in New York City Ballet. I know you need certain things, but like, she really helped me reshape myself and keep my Balanchine aesthetic without leaving it behind. But like, I used to go over and see her with my crossbow from Swan Lake stuck underneath my parka, and we would just run around the studio for an hour, and she would help me in all the detail stuff that like maybe I didn't have time in New York City to address. And then the one, where is he? Willie Berman, the puppet master. So Andrea Selby, who does all those great illustrations for American Appearance, this is like Wendy, Alexandra Ferry, Maria, and Tom Gold, like the puppet master. I started to see Willie in my late 20s and probably had the longest shape on my dance, probably about 15 years of taking his class. And affected me probably the most as a teacher too. He's come here. He's been, you know, taught, slept on my floor between his classes. Extraordinary. I think affected more professional dancers of this day than you can possibly ever imagine. And really kind of encapsulates everybody's teachings. Very big background in Europe before we ever met Balanchine. Balanchine's influences there. Like, I think the one teacher that could teach almost any company in the world and be relevant.
I love it. Mr. Berman, so great. Okay, we have 2 more questions. The last is
long, right, Maria?
It's so funny. No, we're good.
These are too long. Okay.
Okay, so we have 2 more questions. What is your favorite variation to coach, to see on stage? What's your favorite?
Probably the ones I don't coach very often.
Okay.
And probably the ones that are very specific to my talent. Like, I love going in and, you know, YAGP, and I did all those competitions as a kid. I did Beauty and Basilio and Swan Lake. So like, I have a big history in them and I love doing it, but the ballets like this one, Balanchine's Mozartiana, really the only place I would teach it was School of American Ballet Variations class.
Right.
If you didn't ask me what my favorite thing was, and that's Petit Allegro. Petit Allegro is my absolute favorite thing.
So you're the one that likes Petit Allegro.
I'm the one.
You're the one. Okay.
It's weird. I'm really tall, but I can move really fast. Maybe my feet are small. So like Chaconne, which is the very last ballet that I danced when I retired, Mozartiana, are things that I loved, and they're packed with Petit Allegro. The music is amazing. Directional change. they require a lot of coaching because the detail is like super, super specific.
Right.
It's not about, a diagonal, 2 turns, and a manège. They're very complicated. So really, like, those ballets are the ones that I kind of like the most, but probably I'm not called upon as often to do.
Okay. I love that. Okay, this is our very last question. If you could give a piece of advice to your younger self, your younger dancer self, what would it be? It's a hard one, right? There's so many.
There's so many. You stumped me.
I stumped you.
I think that the reason you give yourself advice is because you're trying to protect yourself from lessons that need to be learned.
Right.
And my voice would be like, oh, take it more in stride, or, oh, it was going to work out all along, but I kind of needed to go through those things.
I think that's a brilliant answer.
So I needed to burn my hand on the stove to know. And I've spoken about this with you, Maria. I think some of the things that I chose to do, which made it harder for myself, were protective mechanisms from the things that were going on around me.
Yes.
I tended to be a little aloof. And I think people might have thought I was a little aloof or conceited or however you want to say it, but I think I was trying to protect myself. I tend to go, build a little shell around myself so I can stay focused. When you're like in a really big company, I tended to be friends with just a few people because I didn't want everybody knowing my business. It wasn't that I was aloof or didn't care for people. I just I wanted to separate my private life a little bit from everything, the 12 hours a day I was spending with everyone. Right. And I think as I got older, they realized that, but maybe when I was younger, I didn't project it that way.
But what the lesson from what you're saying and from knowing you, I think that dance is all of you, but you're still a whole person on the outside world of dance. And I think that that's what's made you a very direct and kind director and repetituer and choreographer, is that you're very real, but you're also very direct and very kind at the same time, And I think that maybe from that protection of, this is my dance world and I want my private life to be private, I think that that's okay too.
Yeah, now that I've had a second to think about it.
Take two, go.
I think I would have said to myself, it's okay to be a little bit more forceful. You don't always have to be the one that is the good guy and plays along and says, yes, I understand. I'm like, I don't actually think I was, but I probably would tell myself to be a little bit more proactive because dancers are more proactive now than they were before.
Yes.
And we didn't social media post, we didn't advertise ourselves. When I went to Peter Morton's, it was about something extreme, like I really needed his help. I didn't like to go and ask for parts. I think I asked for parts once or twice, and they were always things that were hard to make me a better dancer. I think it was like Donizetti variations. He's like, are you crazy? That's so hard. For Agon or Apollo. And I was like, no, these are things that are going to make me better.
Yeah.
And then, if he could do it, he could do it. And if he didn't, he didn't. But I think dancers are much more steering their careers a lot more, even in big companies, than they did before. They're their own agents, their own advocates. So I think if you come and you're studying at Next Generation Ballet, I'm going to tell you what I think and I'm going to give you a lot of guidance. I think when you're doing well, too often they go by the no news is good news. Well, everything was fine, so I didn't say anything. And then you're just left floating and you're suffering because you are self-sufficient, you are doing well, and you get no feedback.
Right.
That happened to me a lot. Oh, well, I don't have to worry about you. You're doing fine. Well, why don't I get some criticism, bad, good, bad, or indifferent?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. That's a great answer. Both of those answers, I think, are actually really,
that was a hard one. That was a really good one.
Mr. Neal, it's over. We're done. We're done.
So I didn't ramble?
You didn't ramble. You did great. But we're going to dance out. Are you ready? We're going to dance out. Are you ready?
Okay. So I need to stand.
Ready? 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, he's standing. Yeah, let's the guys.
Around.
Yes, all the way. Okay, we're good. Philip, you did great. Yes, and you're still going.